Welcome to 108 Idea Exchange, learning from peers. And I'm your host, Manny. Super excited for this conversation today. And like always, at 108 Idea Exchange, we invite pioneering leaders in the nonprofit, association, and organizations in the mission-driven work to share their stories and playbooks for our audience to learn from, sometimes validate their efforts, and hopefully even connect with each other and start collaborating. And with that, our today's conversation is for leaders who carry a lot of people running their association and nonprofit. Their work is very personal. The resources are limited, as always, and the stakes are really high. And for that conversation, we have Gloria Aguilera Terry. She's the CEO of Texas Council of Family Violence, leading one of the largest statewide coalitions in the country to end domestic violence through policy, training, and coordination across Texas. And Gloria, you can keep me honest here if I'm exaggerating or if I'm wrong. But you have so much experience. You've been an ED for a nonprofit. You have been a CFO for a Chamber of Commerce. So there's such a rich experience. And I think today's conversation is, as I said earlier, we'll be at an intersection of heart and data. So I'm super excited to dive in. Gloria, welcome.
But no, thank you. I hope I live up to all of those expectations. So I just appreciate, candidly, any opportunity to share anything that I may have in terms of experience and even mistakes that will help other leaders see themselves in this work as well.
Yeah, and we're fortunate to have you here. And Gloria, you lead in a space where, outcomes are not just abstract. There are real human lives on the line. Um, where do you personally feel the weight of the work the most? Like, what helps you stay steady in such line of work?
Well, this work is heavy. There are more reasons to think of to see human frailty on a daily basis. But the fact that you can impact change is what sustains you. So
Mhm.
if I could for just a second, and I know we're going to talk about data, but we in my work we issue a report that examines every domestic violence homicide in our state. And when you, for decades, hear the stories and read the data and meet the people that are impacted through what makes that report possible, it makes you enthusiastic about saving the next life. So it does feel like the stakes are high, but it also feels that change is possible.
This is so fascinating, and this is almost uplifting. And my dad always, when I was a kid, he'd say, Manny, when you grow up, instead of asking people what they do, ask why they wake up. And that completely transitions the way they look at things and it shows their drive. And it sounds to me that's why you and your team wakes up, Gloria. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And as you're leading a membership coalition where the stakes are safety and survival, what's something you wish people understood about leading in this kind of membership model or working in this space?
I mean, I think if I could just for a moment telescope out into leadership in general, I would say that I've been on this earth, that you are on a continuous journey of leadership. So if you feel that you have it all figured out, then
Mhm.
I'm not quite confident you're a leader. If you continually gut check, agonize over the decisions that are before you, and do deep reflections to identify what is the best path for your mission, for your internal staff, for your external stakeholders. And I wish every decision was easy, but the reality is most of them are not.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter what industry or discipline you're in. So I think leadership truly is about lifelong learning. And oftentimes the hardest lessons are when you make a mistake.
Mhm.
So I think if I could convey to people that are early into their leadership, coming up into leadership, that don't get discouraged because you don't have all the answers immediately. Don't get discouraged because you're imperfect. Don't get discouraged because the decision seems so too monumental. All of that comes with learning and time. So thank you for allowing me to just set the stage for that. I think to be a leader in an organization that has a social justice mission does take the ability to lead with heart and
Yeah.
to understand that mission. But in order to have true mission impact, you have to be able to run the organization as a business as well. So how do you sustain yourself? How do you make sure that you have, so we don't make widgets, but we need to have that same level of thought to return on investment, customer service, all of the same aspects that you see aren't lost in a social justice nonprofit organization. In fact, they're equally important as a mission, because you need to be able to have that level of governance, financial stability to be able to fully realize your mission impact.
That's right.
So,
Yeah, that's so strong. And I'd argue even more important, like ROI, profits, and again, profits to fuel the mission, not to line some one person's pocket, but profits are even more important when you're doing such a work. And in fact, in most of my conversations, when I'm having about ROI or profits, I say that you cannot keep ROI out of it. Yes, there is an ROM, which is return on mission, but ROI always has to be there, and that kind of proves the value of the work and effort that we're making. So thanks for that. And you talked about mistakes and taking chances and learning. Could you give an instance? Because this is something that I think everyone has that anxiety. What's my decision gonna cost? What's the cost of my decision? And if it's a mistake, how expensive is the mistake? So I'm sure you balance mistakes and learning together hand in hand, so that eventually you're still leading and not falling behind. But how do you balance mistakes versus learning versus actually leading people?
um, I when I think of mistakes that I've made, they've been both minuscule and what feels like a Titanic level, right? So I think I've covered the full spectrum. So each situation is unique, but the things that come to mind for me in terms of like where I had to step away was oftentimes when things were more difficult, or we're talking about sustainability, that you go into a scarcity mindset, and so you tend to sit at the table with that mindset, which I think unfortunately makes you the worst collaborator in the room.
Yeah.
And so it feels like, if I would say those in the business community, I would say, it's my competition or the competitive edge. But what I have found is a scarcity mindset stunts your growth, stunts your vision, doesn't make people want to collaborate with you. And so there have been instances in my career where the pressures of sustainability put me in a mindset that wasn't ideal. So I would say at like the global level, you've just got to be careful that scarcity mindset doesn't creep in and kind of create some blind spots for you.
Yeah.
When I think about a financial mistake, but I'm sure I've made them, I can't think an example off the top of my head. I think I think about relationships that I could have cultivated differently. I think about times where it felt to this is self-criticism. It may have taken me too long to get to solution.
Yeah.
So those were times where I'm like, I agonized for too long. I delayed the decision for too long. Are examples of lessons learned from failure.
Yeah. I think you touched on a lot of really important notes, the scarcity versus abundant mindset. You talked about, agonizing over decisions, indecisions as well, because indecision is a decision as well. There's consequences to indecision as well. Um, let's talk about this. So if you're talking to someone, or go back in time and you're giving an advice to a 20-year yourself, 20-year-old Gloria, who's potentially aspiring to be a leader, maybe in the nonprofit space or just growing up, experimenting things. How would you frame what you just shared about scarcity, about indecisions? What would be that one line, two-line advice that she could maybe tattoo on her arm and always remember?
This too shall pass.
Mm,
The mistakes don't define you, all right? It's how quickly you learn from them and pivot. So if I was talking to my younger self, I would say be bolder.
be
And
bold.
if you make a mistake, that I would promise her the sky does not fall.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we're like, I don't want to make some big consequence might happen. And I said, I've made mistakes and the sky has never fallen. And I think it took me reaching a certain level of confidence in self to be able to say, okay, this didn't work out. I made the best call in the moment. It didn't work out exactly like I thought. And what adjustments do I need to make without carrying it for too long? So I would tell my younger self, be bold, it'll
Yeah.
pass, keep pushing forward.
That's right. That's such a valuable lesson. I think one of my mentors one time said that, Manny, you need to change the way you look at failure. I mean, failure does not define you, that's for sure. And that I relate to you when you say this too shall pass. And he said that, instead of looking at failure as the end, look at it as fail fast, learn fast, grow faster, and just go at it. So completely resonate with that.
I think you come from wise people,
Yeah.
just based on your father and your uncle. So
Yeah.
I will say that a, a tactic, a strategy that I do use
Uh-huh.
is that when I've made a mistake, I give myself 10 minutes. 10 minutes to feel bad because you've got to
Oh,
process what that emotion, right? And it's like I literally will set a timer and it's like
wow.
feel bad for 10 minutes, agonize, do what you need to do to let that emotional response out. And then after 10 minutes, it's over. Move on.
Hmm. And what thoughts typically go through in those 10 minutes? Like how do you process it?
Well, I mean, I think you replay every second and every other potential outcome if you had played it differently or
Okay.
managed it differently, or that in my mind, I'm like, I should have noticed that, or I should have acknowledged that, or I should have, and so I do the whole should haves,
Yeah.
but I can only do that for 10 minutes, and then it's like, okay, this happened,
Yeah.
but not acknowledging that you do need an outlet means that you'll carry
Yeah.
the burden of that mistake longer than you need to.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, I mean, thank you so much for, your strategies and tactics. And at this point, let's shift gears back to TCFV's mission. Now, TCFV as an organization, from what I understand, supports providers and prevention efforts to, let's say, create freedom from family violence. And if you had to define success, let's say in one sentence, what does freedom look like for this mission?
I would say that every single person would be safe in their own home and would be loved unequivocally by the people that claim to love them most.
Mhm.
That
Yeah,
would be the vision, right?
because um, when I started researching for this podcast, one thing that came to my mind, and I was just about to go to sleep, and I was like, you know, home for me is safety. I mean, if I'm scared anywhere, I just want to go home, and that makes me feel safe. And when you're dealing with people who are in such tough situation, how do you like how do you empower your providers, your agencies, and things like that? Like what's the mindset shift that is needed to support someone like that?
Back to the report I was talking about. It's actually called Honoring Texas Victims It's the only comprehensive analysis of homicides in our state. And oftentimes when in the last report, it was 161 people that were killed and some additional bystanders and family members. And when you read 161 stories, or you've actually talked to the families that were impacted, it just things you've got to be careful, because things will start to feel like they're grim. But when you think about how many people received services in the state of Texas and did not wind up on the report because they had access to somewhere safe, then that's the balance, right? So in our state, 62,000, primarily women and children, sought services because home was not safe. Those 62,000 people, it's an unfortunately high number, but they didn't, more people weren't in our homicide report. So a balanced perspective certainly is 161 lives lost is unacceptable, and we should be outraged. But because there are safety nets in our society, many more lives were saved.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a big impact. You know, and I'd assume, you've highlighted that. I think I read it somewhere that family violence intersects with mental health, housing, economics, stability, and for the obvious reasons. What part of the system do you believe is the keystone? Like, if X improves, everything else get easier.
I think that's a difficult question to answer, because it's a continuum of things. But I do want to insert one comment before I go to exploring the question that you answered. I don't know that the general public fully understands that the impact of family violence has on every aspect of our society. A hurt, injured person cannot sustain employment. A child that is in fear, unhoused, cannot thrive and learn. It is one of the leading causes of cost to employers when people, due to lost work time and turnover. So it's in the top indicators for healthy families out of the Center for Disease Control. So it impacts all of these other mental and physical well-being, and that people tend to think it's just an issue between the family or between two people, but in fact it has a rippling effect in every part of our society. So when you ask the question, what would be, and I'm hearing you say, what's the biggest domino that you can push that then makes the rest of the dominoes fall in place? And for me, it seems like our views are multiple dominoes need to be in place. I think that certainly we need those legal protections and accountability for those who use violence. We need safe places for people to be able to go when again, home is not safe. We need all of us to be able to raise our children to understand what healthy relationships are, and really model and teach people, so that when they do encounter situations where it's not healthy, they're equipped and have tools.
Yeah.
So to me, all of those things need to be working in tandem. So I don't know that I have one domino that I would push.
Yeah. And I feel, much like most bigger issues, there's not one key that can solve everything. I completely agree with your assessment here, that there's so many ways this needs to change, and there's so much that we can do as public, as human beings, creating a healthy environment for ourselves, creating a healthy environment for younger ones out there, as they learn and adopt on how to treat others around themselves and things like that. From now TCFV TCFV, as an organization, do you find yourself as supporting prevention, or do you find yourself more on, eradicating this problem as a whole? Like, where do you see yourself?
Again, it's a multi-pronged approach. And so prevention is every bit of embedded into everything that we do. So you continually have to work both ends of the spectrum at the exact same time. You need to help people in need. You need to help people accountable who use violence. And then we have to implement strategies that are interrupting more harm, strategies that interrupt homicides, strategies that are teaching different tools so that people don't have to have better tools in which to be able to thrive in healthy relationships. So you're working both ends of that spectrum.
Mm-hmm. And when I was researching your website, I realized that you're a membership-based organization. And how is your membership model different from typical association membership model?
Okay. So if I could, I don't know how any other association was initially started, but I'll tell you how the Texas Council was formed. 5 women were sitting around a table, and they operated the first domestic violence crisis shelters in Texas. And they thought, if we come together, we will learn from each other and we'll have a bigger voice. And at that time, there was only 5. So those were the 4 people, the 4 mothers of the coalition. This was in 1978, where it was considered a personal matter, right? So if you committed violence in your home, there was no laws protecting you. But that framework is what propelled everything that followed, because then soon there were more shelters in Texas, and they wanted to be part of a collective, and then there were more, and to date we're a little over 100 member organizations strong, and I think part of us, our nuance being different than a regular association, because by definition we are an association. But what makes us a little bit different is we do identify ourselves as a coalition, and that means something for us. And when we do advocacy at the legislature, for example, or at the federal level, we're speaking as a collective. So we're saying it's not one voice you're hearing. It is a collective. We're harnessing the power of coalition to demand change. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when I meet with legislators, they're not just talking to Gloria at the Texas Council on Family Violence. They're talking to Gloria that represents 100 organizations who are all their constituents, who employ collectively thousands of people across the state of Texas, who also have an economic impact in their own jurisdictions and communities that they serve. So that's the power of coalition, is that you've got massive amounts of people all facing in the same direction, which again, very similar to associations. We just want to acknowledge we're a coalition.
Yeah, that's amazing. And your membership, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it includes providers, survivors, businesses, professionals, and each and every one of them, I would assume, would have very different needs, but they're all under the same roof. When you think about member value, like, how do you define member value in such a scenario?
So some of and we have tiers of members. So when I talk about we have 100 organizations, those are our primary members, and then there's cascading members. So individuals like survivors would also be a member. When you think about the collection of members that we have, we're a little over 1,100 members strong. And so each one of those members will have a different expectation of us based on their level. Certainly for our primary members, those domestic violence organizations and community, the way that we show stakeholder value to them is through appropriation measures. It is very difficult to be a nonprofit that is heavily dependent on public support
Yeah.
and the complexity that comes with stewarding those resources. But those resources are necessary to again, be able to be there for victims and survivors in their own communities. So you demonstrate value by elevating their voice and needs and protecting the resources that come directly to the organization. They, but collectively, the entire 1,100 member organization wants to see laws change that provide greater legal protections. So oftentimes we're, I mean, this is a true story. Up until, it feels like a long time ago, but up until about 15 years ago, strangulation was a misdemeanor in Texas. We were able to change the statute through support from the legislature to make it a felony. And it has completely changed what accountability looks like when somebody commits that level of offense. That's the member value that people want, is they know what's happening in society. They're helping people navigate those challenges. So they need the coalition, the council, to represent their voice, their interest. And then secondly, we by design, the trainers. So if you're looking for best practices, if you're looking for ways in which you can do your work that meets all the current ways in which to work in this tough environment, one of your key places to receive that kind of education and training is with the council. So they're seeking that from us. And then lastly, I would say the state is huge. So when you're trying to follow trends and you're trying to establish what parts of the state have varying levels of impact and the type of impact may look differently, it is the council at the state level that is collecting and synthesizing data that lets you know with greater certainty what the landscape is. And so there isn't another entity that is collecting data in the same way we are.
Got it. And, you kind of answered my follow-up question with your response there, which was, what are the core member outcomes you're accountable for? And I was thinking around the grounds of training, setting standards, funding flows, advocacy, alignment, data consistency, and you kind of touched on all of those.
All of those.
Yeah. So that's awesome. And you talked about, being a hub and being a reliable source of data. Now, there's external data that you're providing to your members, but talking about member data, like peeping inside, the way you're internally, your operations, the technologies you use, the data sets you have on your members, and most associations use, association management systems or CRMs or other products. And I feel you use a coalition management tool. But how do you look at data internally when you're looking for member engagement or any other signals that can support your members?
Well, fair to say that we are, we survey a great deal, right? So we want to know what it is that our member needs are more distinctly. And many of them tell us proactively even before we survey them. So there's that. We do a fairly intensive research projects alongside a couple of higher education institutions here in Texas. And then, to be frank, we do a lot of information requests from different sources. At one juncture, we looked at ourselves in the room and we're like, we think we have more data than any one organization in the state as it relates to this issue. So I firmly believe that. I think there's projects that we manage where we layer different types of data. So we'll look at population, crime data, layer how many people access services, what kind of services, the depth of service. And so you start to see this really clear snapshot that you can telescope down to a county level. So this is no small task, but this is also nothing that anybody else in the state is doing to the same level that we are with regards to this issue.
Yeah, yeah. And when that is the mindset, like you want to serve as many people as possible. And if I look at your organization, the whole mission and the providers you support, your members, one statement comes to mind: you're helping those who help others. And if you notice, I strongly resonate with that myself. And if you go on my LinkedIn profile, that's on my cover page as well. Because as a technology provider, working primarily for association and nonprofit, I see myself in that position as well. Like, we are helping those nonprofits who are helping a community or our members and a bigger mission. Now, in because I resonate with that, there's some tasks on a day-to-day basis that I need to do because sometimes technology is a friction point or something else is a friction point. And if those were not on my plate, I would be able to support these nonprofit on a much deeper level or on a much meaningful manner. When you think about your organization, and I know when I speak with nonprofit leaders, I speak to them about balancing funding or reporting requirements or human urgency at the same time, right? Where does your team, do you find, like, they spend time that does not show up in, let's say, grant reports, but is still something that they need to do every single day because it's essential for the mission work? I know it was a very long question.
No, I'm like, I have a sarcastic answer and then I have a real answer. So if I were to say, what are the things that are creating time sucks, right?
Yeah.
That I wish didn't exist. I think we're in an environment where it is very, very difficult to be a nonprofit.
Mhm.
There is a significant and I feel burdensome requirements and oversight from any state or federal funding. So again, the majority of nonprofits receive varying levels of public support, but you spend unnecessary time meeting requirements that I believe are unnecessary.
Mhm.
I we and it sounds to me like you're very familiar with nonprofits because we report information differently to different government agencies, which seems like another waste of time.
Mhm.
And and it's because that the government is structured to be so segmented when the person you're trying to serve just wants to be served. They don't want to be segmented.
Yeah.
And so even at the coalition level, you can use this funding exclusively for this, but not for that. And the same
Mhm.
could be said for any other source. And so it requires you to segment your work and then re-envision it as whole again. So
Mhm.
you have a vision, you have an execution, and then you have to segment it to meet some requirement, and then you have to make it whole again. So to me, that's unnecessary time. So that was my sarcastic answer. So I think that and this is probably true for most nonprofits who have some human interest mission
Mhm.
impact. But I think you have to spend quite a bit of time visioning what is possible.
Mhm.
And we use this phrase frequently about if you can envision a world free of violence, then you can help create it. And so giving ourselves the freedom to not be so responsive to consistent pressure that we give ourselves time to really think about solution and steps. So I would say it's not going to show up on a timesheet to a funder report, but
Yeah.
it's the time that you spend calculating where do we spend our time and effort to advance towards the goal that we want to reach.
Yeah. Again, this reminds me of the time I first joined a gym decades ago, and my gym trainer told me that if your mind can conceive it, you can achieve it. So it reminds me of that, and that's so true on so many levels, because I've worked with nonprofits where funding resources are always limited. But if there is a problem worth solving, people find ways. People find ways to build reports in a way that make the most impact, build stories, not build stories, but present stories with actual facts that will move a needle. And I completely agree with you on that. Now, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, and I'm super happy with how this conversation is progressing. Now, let's talk about the vision and future. And let me go back to the line where you said that leadership comes sometimes from mistakes as well. So, what were some mistakes, or let's call them gaps, tactical gaps, or that you found, let's say, in the last year or recently that you're trying to fill this year or maybe by 2027?
I don't know that they would be tactical gaps. I think it'd be more around you continue to refine clarity and vision, clarity and vision. So last year we have this program where we call it the Thought Leader Program. We invite 10 to 12 executive leaders from our memberships to come in and to be in foresight. Like, we're going to see the challenges of today every day, but we need to take time to think about what's coming down the pike, right? And sometimes we get so busy we lose sight of that. So we were scheduled to convene a group, and I decided to take a different spin on this. I could see AI was coming, and it was coming it's coming everywhere, but certainly the nonprofit community, we tend to be late adopters in technology, and domestic violence organizations, I would say, probably lag even behind the typical nonprofit sector. So instead of bringing together 10 or 12 executive leaders from direct services, we decided to make it 30 people, but to invite different disciplines. So we had 4 or 5 judges, we had prosecutors, we had people from the education community, we had 2 other statewide associations that have nothing to do with family violence, but we needed somebody that thought differently than we did. And then we invited Amazon to the table. We needed a tech company to sit there and say, impart some wisdom, but also maybe to understand the complexities, right? So, we used the beginning of the meeting to talk about the complexities of harm that AI could bring. And we've seen them surface. We saw people who are creating agents and now establishing a relationship with an AI agent as if it was a real person. We've seen evidence of like the AI sexy teacher, AI therapist, AI boyfriend, girlfriend, you name it. And so we're like, what is that? How is that going to interrupt healthy relationships in the future? This generation of AI adapters, that's all they're going to know when you think about it. How are they going to learn about relationships and connecting to real people versus an agent who's simply validating where they are? We've known that there's tech-enabled abuse that has existed for a long time, but AI, for folks who want to cause harm, gives them steroids, right, to cause harm. So we spent the morning part of the day examining all the potential risks and harms that we needed to be thinking about as a movement. And then in the afternoon, we totally flipped to the other side of the coin. Where and how can the domestic violence movement benefit from some of the tools that AI is bringing us? And so I'm gonna be very honest here. I didn't know what was going to happen at that meeting. It was just an idea, like, let's just bring some people together. We don't even know if they know about AI or what they know or if they're using it, but we need to have a collection of different voices, and we want to have a couple of voices that don't know our work. And it was remarkable. We had everything in the spectrum from, I have never used AI, I don't want to use AI, it's never going to enter my life, all the way to where I'm creating things. I've created entire infrastructures using, an LLM. So it was remarkable. And then the first part of the meeting, everybody was scared. I'm not gonna date anymore. I'm not gonna let my kids have a laptop or an iPad, right? And then in the afternoon, it totally switched. Like, we could use this. We could use these tools to better support people who are seeking a protective order. We can use these tools to help train new advocates that are on the front line working with people. to help them learn, become trauma informed on an agent rather than making mistakes on a person, a real person. So we've come full circle, and we're hosting 2 more meetings in the not too distant future. So
Wow.
when you think about leap of faith, I didn't know when I suggested this idea to my team if I was going to land on my feet and it meant something, or if I was going to land on my behind. I'm like, let's throw this idea out there, and I think we've also adjusted our mindset to say we're not going to be a recipient of the AI development community. We can be part of the AI development community.
Yeah.
So I don't know what your question was, so I don't even know if I answered it through my response.
No, but this was an amazing response, and and that's why we started 108 Idea Exchange as well, like to bring different people in and understand what their insights are, what their experiences are about different aspects, and how they perceive different things in their lives. So this is a great initiative, and if you record this whole day of work, I'd love to learn from it because it
Well,
sounds
if
like
you
very
come
good.
down to Austin, you can be part of our thought leader program
I'd
and
love
for the
to.
day.
I'd love to. If I anyways traveled to Texas for the TSA. I was there in San
Mhm,
Antonio
mhm.
last year, and I'd love to. This sounds like such an
I'll send
amazing
you
experience.
I'll send you information, and what you tell me. We'll make, maybe we can make something happen.
Sure. Yeah, let's do that. Now, this has been such an amazing conversation. But like every conversation, time is what limits us, right? So I like to end all my conversations with final five. And these are questions that you can answer in a word or a phrase. If you have something really amazing, there's no need to limit it to a phrase. But yeah, let's keep it short, snappy, like a rapid fire. So
Okay.
all right. So the first question is, because you work for such an amazing cause, what's the core value TCFV protects?
Integrity.
Integrity. Now I'm intrigued. Elaborate.
The integrity of our data, the
Mhm,
integrity about how we conduct ourselves, the integrity to carry the message um, that we're asked to move forward.
That's amazing. Second question. What's the biggest myth people believe about domestic violence?
That it happens to other people. And usually it's going to be people that have a certain socio or economic status, that it will never impact me or my family.
Mm, yeah. And let me actually follow up on that. And this may not be a one line, one phrase kind of an answer, but what can be early signals people should keep an eye out for to avoid getting in a situation of domestic violence?
Certainly there should be a balance in a relationship, right? It doesn't mean that 2 people can't disagree or that there will never be disagreement, but there should be some parity in the relationship. So early signs for us, or red flags, would be somebody that isolates you from friends and family,
Mhm.
somebody that is immediately possessive. Sometimes in young people, they think, well, my boyfriend just wants to spend time with me and nobody else. When in fact, all of those are symptoms of a power and control situation, right? I think many of us, if you feel it and if something feels off in your gut, it's probably true. Listen to it.
Yeah,
But some of these can some of these dynamics begin because they chip away at your confidence. They chip away at your dignity, and you start to believe that those things are true. And
yeah.
that when you start to challenge those beliefs, then it might be that I raise my voice, and that makes you stop. The next time you disagree with me and you raise your voice, I'll push you, and it'll escalate. I'll keep using an escalated tactic to keep you where you need to be, where I want you to be.
Mhm. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's definitely helpful for so many people out there. And my next question is the leadership trait that you rely on the most when things get hard.
Well, Like activity when things
Uh,
get hard, or my
in your role, like I mean, we've discussed how difficult this mission is. There's so much weight behind it, right? So, what's a leadership trait that always either keeps you steady and going after this mission, or a trait that you rely on the most when things get hard, maybe personally or even at work? Like, what do you think would that trait be?
I think I'm much more reflective than I am reactive.
Hmm.
And so I there's been instances where I've been reactive and it doesn't work. It doesn't work well. It's never worked well for me. But I tend to be the person that takes a step back for a moment and give myself the opportunity to process before acting or responding.
Hmm.
So when things get hard, I take a pause rather than reacting in the moment to whatever that stressor is.
Awesome. All right. Next question. The metric you trust most to tell real stories about your mission.
I think because we have so many opportunities and people will want to look at evidence, if I could use, I'm using quotation marks with my fingers, and you demonstrate evidence through the integrity of the data that you use. And so whether it's about, again, advancing a specific legal protection, whether it's about conveying impact, then I would rely on my data.
Got it. And one last question could be a word or phrase. One system or technology, upgrade. It could be for your people, for your process or technology, that would move your mission a bit faster, or maybe move the needle even more.
I think AI is offering that particular opportunity to us now. Um, so I can't think of a specific, any one particular platform or any one particular piece of equipment. Um, but I think for us to fully realize our mission, we have to be able to use the most current tools that are available to us. Um, and like I mentioned, most nonprofits are usually last in line to adopt technology and new methods. And I would say domestic violence organizations are at the very back of the line. And it's because we tend to prioritize resources for people, for
Mhm.
our people. And
Yeah,
it's not that we don't care or don't know or don't acknowledge it, but you tend to put your resources towards helping people or for the people that are helping people.
yeah. This has been such an amazing conversation, Doria. I mean, we talked about your leadership journey. We talked about your organization and how it's making an impact. We talked about AI and the different things that you're doing to bring new ideas in front of you. Um, I really love this conversation, and I hope that we can have more conversations like this with you in the future as well. Um, any last thoughts?
Well, Manny, I just want to say thank you for taking interest in our mission. It isn't something that is wildly popular or people want to talk about. It is difficult. So thank you, one, for elevating it. If I could just say again to people who are on their leadership journey, to, I wrote this article for TSAE on leadership. And I talk about my own journey being, I thought I had to be perfect. So I would memorize every presentation in advance and I would try to know every answer to any question that might be asked. I thought that I had to fake it till I made it. I thought that, you know, I had to be the last one to leave the office and had to be the one that modeled getting everything done. When in fact, none of those are strong leadership traits. You
Mhm.
know, you don't have to fake it. Be yourself. You're
Yeah,
enough. You don't have to be perfect. And people readily accept when you're like, I don't have the answer to that, but I will circle back with you. And so the hardish critics tends to be the voice inside our heads. So as you're seeking your leadership journey, you know, dispel all of those things that are holding you back and just be bold and go forward.
that's amazing advice. Thank you so much. And for all our listeners out there, I think this has been a master class at leadership as leading things with heart as well, not losing sight of the mission, thinking, always learning, and a lot of other things. I just leave this with thought, reach out to Gloria. We reached out through LinkedIn, and then the email we found online, and you're so generous in responding and supporting us in making this conversation happen. So I'd say that it always takes one ask, and you can find so many answers. And with that, I'll let my listeners tune into this podcast and wait for the next one as we drop the other one. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Manny.
Thank you, Gloria.